The dimensions of Solomon's temple were so colossal that they defy any modern comparison. 30 meters in height rose above Jerusalem like a mountain of impossible engineering. The interior walls displayed approximately 27 tons of pure gold, laid out in plates that transformed the interior into a sea of light. Bronze columns, about 8 meters tall and weighing nearly 34 tons each, supported the entrance. The interior cladding was made of cedar imported from the forests of Lebanon, its aroma filling every space. The floor was entirely crafted from polished cypress, and at the heart of the temple rested 2 cherubim, 4.5 meters tall, carved from olive wood and overlaid with beaten gold. If you love stories of mysteries and epic achievements, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. Nothing the ancient world knew came close to the grandeur of this work. Solomon's temple was not just a religious building. It redefined the concept of monumental construction in antiquity. No known structure spent so much gold, required so much labor, or demanded such technical innovation. And among all the mysteries, there was one that still puzzles scholars today. How were stones weighing up to 400 tons cut, shaped, and fitted without cranes, metal machines, or modern tools? 3,000 years before the equipment we now consider the minimum for a project of this scale. Contemporary engineers examine the records and reach the same impasse. It should not have been possible. And yet, it happened. This account reveals the techniques, materials, and secrets behind the most extraordinary work of antiquity, and why, to this day, no one has been able to fully reproduce what Solomon built. It all began with a simple theoretical requirement, but absurd in practice. The foundation stones had to be the largest ever cut in Israel. The book of 1 Kings explicitly mentions great stones and precious stones, indicating that these were no ordinary blocks. Later excavations on the platform of the Second Temple revealed blocks exceeding 400 tons. To visualize the weight, this equals the combined weight of dozens of adult elephants. Now imagine cutting a monolith of this size from the mountain without explosives, without electric tools, and without precision machines. For this task, Solomon assigned around 80,000 men, distributed across quarries in the mountains around Jerusalem. They began work before dawn, marched to the extraction fronts, and faced one of the most dangerous jobs in construction. The stone could not be cut randomly. Each block had a specific destination, shape, and function. There could be no cracks, no deviation, no errors, because a divine instruction made the work even more complicated. No sound of iron tools could be heard at the construction site. This included hammers, chisels, and metal instruments. Everything had to leave the quarries ready. The technique used by the cutters was rudimentary yet ingenious. First, they etched precise lines with hard stones, marking where the block should separate. Then they drilled small aligned holes, inserted well-dried wooden stakes, and poured water. The wood swelled, pressure gradually increased, and after long hours, sometimes days, the stones split exactly where they wanted. It was silent, patient, and deadly engineering. If the cut failed, the entire block, hundreds of tons, became useless. Experienced stonemasons shaped, leveled, and smoothed the surfaces with stone tools. Each block received specific markings, symbols indicating its exact position in the temple. One marking error and the whole stone was lost. Collapses were common. Blocks would unexpectedly break free, rolling down slopes. There were no rescuers, no emergency equipment. Many died during extraction. For free Israelite workers, there was at least the consolation of shifts. 1 month of work, 2 months of rest. For the Canaanites subjected to forced labor, there was no alternative. They would cut stones until they died or until the work was finished, whichever came first. Cutting was only half the battle. The most brutal stage began when the stone block was ready. How to move 400 tons of rock across kilometers of uneven terrain? This transport was responsible for most of the deaths. About 70,000 men were assigned exclusively for this task. The technique was not complex but exhausting and often deadly. Compacted earth ramps. Thick logs served as rollers. Giant ropes made of intertwined plant fibers were tied tightly around the stone. Hundreds of men pulled in unison, following shouted commands from supervisors. They advanced a few centimeters at a time, repositioned the rollers, breathed, pulled again. And they did this for days, weeks, sometimes months. If a rope broke, and they often did, disaster was inevitable. The accumulated tension would release with a violent snap. Men were thrown forward, crushed against the ground, or run over by the block itself, which lost stability and descended like a stone monster. There was no compensation for families, no pause for mourning. One body was removed, and another worker took its place. The cedar forests of Lebanon were about 200 kilometers from Jerusalem, an immense distance for that time. Israel had no cedars, so Solomon made a costly agreement with Hiram, king of Tyre. Specialist woodcutters would supply all the necessary timber in exchange for colossal quantities of wheat and oil. 10,000 Israelites were sent to Lebanon in rotating shifts. They worked alongside the Sidonians, who knew techniques for felling and preparing massive logs. Once cut, the cedars were transported in 2 stages. The logs were tied together, forming enormous rafts. Phoenician towboats guided these rafts across the Mediterranean to the port of Joppa. Storms were a constant risk, ropes broke, and logs were lost to the sea forever. From Joppa to Jerusalem was approximately 60 kilometers. The logs returned to the stone method: rollers, ramps, ropes, human strength. But wood is fragile. Scratches, impacts, or drops could completely compromise the log. Overland transport could take weeks, sometimes months, and many died along the way, from fever, malnutrition, accidents. Still, each log that reached the site was indispensable. The temple advanced piece by piece. The construction site was one of the quietest places in the ancient world. One slip, a hammer striking metal, and the punishment was immediate. Construction became an exercise in discipline, technique, and reverence. The blocks had to fit perfectly without adjustments. Everything was prepared away from the temple. Each stone, beam, joint, molding, everything left the quarries and workshops with millimeter precision. Supervisors controlled every detail. The markings engraved on the stones indicated exactly where each should be placed. One mistake could compromise weeks of work, and everyone knew that a mistake meant punishment. If the stone was the body of the temple, gold was its skin. 27 tons completely covered the interior. Walls, ceiling, and floor of the Holy of Holies gleamed. But working with pure gold is art, and art demands mastery. Solomon brought in a foreign specialist, Hiram, a Phoenician craftsman recognized for his extraordinary talent. Under his command, the furnaces burned 24 hours a day. The heat was so intense that even experienced men fainted. The gold was heated, hammered, stretched into thin sheets, and carefully applied to noble woods. Monumental cherubim were sculpted and overlaid with gold sheets. The bronze columns, Jachin and Boaz, were cast under his supervision. He was not merely an artisan, he was the mind behind all the temple's metallurgy. The gold came from international tributes, mines, and special taxes. Solomon received over 20 tons of gold per year, much of it dedicated exclusively to the temple. The result? An interior that shone as if the sun itself resided there. All this was only possible thanks to an impressive command structure. About 150,000 workers were involved in the project. They were spread across mountains, forests, quarries, workshops, and the main construction site. To coordinate all this, Solomon established a rigid system. 3,300 supervisors in groups, 550 chief overseers, and a direct line of command to the king. They monitored schedules, performance, discipline, and punishments. They knew who worked fast, who delayed, who needed replacement. Daily meetings set routes, deadlines, and objectives. Efficient workers earned rewards. Rule breakers received severe punishment. Surprisingly, no revolt occurred. No war interrupted the work. No plague devastated the people. The project advanced without pause, day after day, for 7.5 years. When the last stone was placed in the 8th month of Solomon's 11th year, the temple was complete. Months later, it was inaugurated during the Feast of Tabernacles. 1 Kings describes the moment when the priests brought the Ark of the Covenant into the Holy of Holies. And then, a cloud appeared. A thick cloud filled the interior of the temple so intensely that the priests could not remain inside. The divine presence filled the place that millions of man-hours had constructed. It was the final confirmation that all the effort, sacrifices, and lost lives had culminated in a single purpose: to create a dwelling for God. Solomon celebrated with thousands of sacrifices, numbers so high they could not be counted accurately. The temple was complete, the most complex, costly, and impossible work of antiquity. And even today, 3,000 years later, the mystery remains. How was it possible? If you were amazed by this story, like the video, share it with friends, and subscribe to discover more epic mysteries of history.